On 22 March 2022, Ronald Moyo was appointed substantive Highlanders Football Club Chief Executive Officer, the youngest person in the country's footballing history to hold such a position. With many asking who this young man is to take up such a huge responsibility, Sunday Live TV had a sit down with Moyo to find out more about him and his vision for the country's oldest team.
Mr. Moyo, welcome to our short news feature on your rise as the CEO of Highlanders Football Club.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Due.
Moyo, very few people know who is Ronald Moyo. Actually, people know you as the Highlanders spokesperson. Before long, you have been promoted to become the acting CEO. Some people are surprised. The vacancy came through. You were eventually employed to take over this big position as the CEO. Tell us about Ronald Moyo, the person, not the Highlanders CEO.
Okay, Ronald Moyo is a young man who was born on the 16th of May. I was born in Lupane, where my mother had visited his sister. Fortunately or fortunately, she had to deliver from Lupane, and she quickly came back to our home place, our home, koSigola. Most people know Llewellyn Barracks. It's just 2 kilometers away from Llewellyn Barracks, which is, I think, from town, from the city center. It's about 27 kilometers from town. That's where I grew up, and there's a school called koSigola Primary School. That's where I did my primary education. But maybe before that, maybe just to highlight, some people don't even know that where I come from. They don't even know that I'm Ronald. They call me Bruce or Roland. Roland being my original name that was given by my parents. And it so happened, unfortunately, that when they went for my birth registration, my birth certificate, there was that mistake, that misspelling. It was spelled Ronald. It's a mistake that we discovered when I was in grade 7, when I was writing my grade 7 exams. I had gone all the way from grade 1 up to grade 7 without that mistake being noticed. And then the name Bruce, of course, which is the most common from where I come from. It's not in my records, not in my certificates, but it's the most common one. If you go koSigola and say you're looking for Ronald, you will easily get lost. You won't find, you won't find me. So Bruce is a name that was given by my late maternal grandfather. May he so rest in peace. The reason why it's not there is the reason why it's not there in my certificate is that he gave me that name when I was growing up, when I started walking. So the narrative is that I used to walk around holding a ball on paper, and I'm told I was even more lighter in complexion during that time, and I didn't have hair, so my grandfather, being a staunch Highlanders fan, he then called me, this is Bruce koSigola. Look at the way how he holds the ball. He's going to be a great goalkeeper for Highlanders. So it's a story that is known in the community in general. That's my grandfather. So as I said, maybe to go back to my education, then I went to koSigola Primary School for my primary education, where coincidentally my late mother was also a teacher there. She was teaching at that primary school. And then after my primary school at koSigola Primary School, I had to go to Slengeni, which is Scotini. So the places that I'm talking about is under Mzingwane district, Matebele South. So koSigola being the first ward 1, Mzingwane district. And then Slengeni, where there's Slengeni Secondary School, is ward 2. So I went to Slengeni Form 1 to Form 4. I'm happy that it's also the same school where my mother, attended her O-levels studies. She left a record there of being the best student in terms of, academically. She was also, she had left a record that was, it's a school that kept records, so it's a record that challenged me a lot. She's a person, she was a head girl there. She participated in sports, drama, especially netball, where she was also the captain. And she did well at school. She left some amazing records. So I went to that school with a little bit of challenge, and for me it was overwhelming because I thought I can't do that, and rightfully so I failed to to break those records because the time when I wrote my exams, it was in 2008. Things were difficult. I think I was learning only 4 subjects. I managed to add the subject that I added that I was not doing was literature. I read novels for myself. I find the teacher was there, but somehow we were left alone. I think in Form 3 to read novels alone. But then I managed. In that stream, only 5 of us managed to pass, and 4 boys and a girl. The name of the lady was Trisha Mgandla, who used to give me a nightmare from primary. So it was quite an interesting experience. Then from there, my late grandfather decided against me going to do my A-level studies at the same school. He decided to move me to Induna High School, at Induna Barracks. It's an army school. It was a difficult experience, going there, coming across students who had passed, flying colors, coming from A school. So it was a challenge. It was really a challenge. And for a record, if you go to Induna, I did my A-level until the final exam. I never got 5 points. It's something that people don't know. I never got 5 points. I was always one of the lowest ranked students, but I still had that conviction that I know that I'm the best in this stream. I remember it was second term, they used to do prize giving day. I didn't attend prize giving, but the guys who had performed better had scored 11 points. My best friend, Perfect Matsima, and our head boy, Wilbert Frank Ndlovu. And I remember quite well telling them that, come final exam, I'll join you. They were on top when I was congratulating them. They accepted it, but for everyone else, they thought, because they didn't know that I had that capacity, that capability. So I was doing sociology, history, and literature at A-level. Fortunately, I became one of the best students. The best students were 3 of us. We scored, I think, about 12 points then. It was Perfect Matsima, Wilbert Ndlovu, and Ronald Moyo. Those were high students, and it's documented there in Induna. So after that, I got a scholarship. I got a scholarship. I had gone to MSU. Initially, I wanted to do sociology. I went to use it. Unfortunately, it was a bit late because after A-level, I went for temporal teaching, and I was deployed at a school called Makokomba in Nyamandlovu. It's a very, very remote school. So I used to miss out a lot, and by then there was no social media. There was no social media, so I used to miss out a lot. Even in terms of for you to access a newspaper, it was very difficult. So I missed the deadlines of application at UZ. So when I went to UZ with my results, they were convinced. If the program that you want to do it's okay because I scored an A in sociology. But unfortunately, they had closed applications, and for me, I couldn't wait. I thought maybe I would end up being, losing that hunger that I had for going to university. So I had to go to MSU. MSU initially, they advertised that they've got sociology. When only I find out when I got there that it's something that they were still, it was still work in progress. So I couldn't wait. I remember I then consulted. There's a guy who was a librarian to say, these are my results and I want to do something. The guy had to ask me my background, where do you come from and so forth. I told him and said to me, young man, he was just frank. You've got a very, very poor background. You can't afford to do things that will not give you something, immediately after finishing your program. You need something that will at least give you something where you can earn a living. He said, you know what, go and apply for a media and society studies. That's what he said. Straight away I went there, I believed him, it was so convincing. I applied for it, and the rest is history. I got there, I enjoyed myself. I think in my first or second year, I already started, contributing articles to one of the to some local newspapers. One of them, the final one being the Southern Eye, where the editor was Kolwani Nyati. And then this other day asked me, what is it that you are doing? I said, I'm a student, and that helped. Very soon looking for internship, and I got my internship at Southern Eye. That's where I think my passion for football administration began, because all along I was known, even at college, my colleagues knew me as a very, very staunch Highlanders fan. I could, use my grocery monies to follow Highlanders. I used to go in Harare, students come maybe this side from Gweru to come and watch Highlanders, with your parents not even knowing that you are in Blawa. So it's a passion that then started there. Then maybe to cut a long story short, I then got into the sports desk at Southern Eye. I developed interest in, I used to read a lot about football administration. I used to admire a lot, the likes of Ndumiso Gumede, and say, one of the days I want to be like this man.
Right. Before you get into that, in the football administration part, tell us about your journey with Highlanders. When did you start supporting Highlanders?
The family where I grew up in Vusa was a Highlanders family. As I told you, I was told this when I was young, that you were called Bruce because there's a Highlanders goalkeeper called Bruce Kobler. So for me, it gave me that curiosity to say, what is it about Highlanders? So I grew up in a family where on Sundays, you know that the radio will be on, listening to football on radio. It's Highlanders, and during those years, Highlanders was winning a lot of matches. So I fall in love with Highlanders. There is a time where I almost became an Amazon boy, because I went for trials there without my parents knowing again, until I got to a point where I had to bring my birth certificate. When I broke the news, they refused. They wanted me to concentrate in school. But that love for Highlanders was, it was like, you grow up in a culture where some things are just, in a family where some things are just culture. Highlanders, Soul Brothers, Machaeva, and things like that. That's the kind of setup where I grew up. So for me, that love for Highlanders, gradually it grew. And I can simply say I became a Highlanders fan, I think, as early as in grade 1.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Football administration. I know my interactions with you previously, I'm sure. You did your masters, and then you did something on sports on Highlanders. Tell us about that.
Yeah. My passion for football administration started when I was an intern, where I was actually deployed on the sports desk, where I was interacting with a lot of football administrators, because naturally journalism, for one to be a good journalist, we were always told you have to be a historian, you have to be a researcher, you have to be an anthropologist, you have to almost be everything. So I was to research a lot, and I then discovered that I had a lot of passion in football administration, where you come across the names of people like the late Ndumiso Gumede, and you say, I want to be like this man. Where, what I found even more interesting was, the facts that we always shared about Gumede, that he became the chairman of Highlanders at the age of 33, 34, thereabout. So I developed that passion. So when I went back to school to complete my program after attachment, maybe to also give credit to one of my lecturers who later on supervised my dissertation. he knew me from a personal perspective. So when we were asked to submit topics for for dissertations, I had 3 topics, and the other ones were about political communication. I think he said, for you, I'm posing this question, this topic. I was, it was a time when Highlanders had struggled to beat Dynamos in late matches. I think it was 9 years or 10 years thereabout. So the whole idea was to look at how the Chronicle and the Herald framed that kind of discourse where Highlanders were failing to beat Dynamos. I read a lot of stories because I liked Highlanders. Just imagine the Highlanders Dynamos, the battle of Zimbabwe, the flagship of Zimbabwean football. So whenever they are going to play, I used to read a lot of stories about them. So I found a gap, an academic gap, and said, you know what, I want to explore this. So that research actually exposed me a lot to football, because it required me to read a lot of literature on football administration, rivalries, how clubs make make money. Particularly, what I found even more interesting was that even this much celebrated El Clasico itself, resembled the Highlanders Dynamos clash. And the fact that, by reading, fine, you're concentrating on particular aspects, but it widens the literature, leads you to a lot of other aspects, football governance, football business, if you like. So that was, for me, I think that was the telling moment. It was the telling, where I became even so much convinced that this is what I want.
Okay.
This is what I want.
Now, the journey to become the CEO, you're the youngest CEO to lead such a big institution. Take us through it.
Okay. Maybe as a continuation, soon after I finished my undergrad degree, I got attached to Wonder Rovers, where I worked with the likes of Gilbert Swanda, Metendenge of Mokse, as the communications officer of Wonder Rovers, the now defunct Wonder Rovers. So when you are passionate and you find an opportunity to express yourself where you are. So I'm one person who likes growing, who likes growth, which I most of the times refer to the process of becoming, where I believe that people continuously grow. They don't reach a point where they've said, I've grown. So that's where my passion grew even more, where I said, you know what, some of these things are possible. Because people like Wilbert will give you responsibilities outside your desk because of trust, maybe, what the capacity that they've seen in you. And then the following year, I was fortunate enough to join Highlanders Football Club as the communications and media officer. So at Wonder Rovers, it became a very, very interesting experience, where I worked with the likes of Wilbert Sivanda and Metembe Ndlovu. So working with Wilbert, he used to give me, some responsibilities that were outside my desk, and that on its own gave me confidence that maybe he was seeing, capacity in me. So as someone who has always told himself that I'm in the process of becoming, I'm learning, you take that as an advantage. Certain things that people might think, someone is giving me things that are not part of my responsibilities. For me, I took that as a learning curve. I'm thankful for that. The trust that they had in me, So the following year, I then find myself in the Islander structures. After Wonder Rovers had decided to concentrate on other areas. So I found myself at Highlanders, and for me that was a dream job. There's something that I always joke about, to say, I think my family, they're very, very supportive. I actually had 2 options. I got a job from a certain NGO. The offer was tempting, but because of the love for Highlanders and the future and the direction that I had already chosen, so I decided to come to Highlanders. it was quite an interesting, experience. Highlanders is a very, very big institution with a lot of pressure. But I might say, the Highlanders that you've been reading about out there, and the Highlanders that is actually there, that exists, especially from an internal perspective, are two different worlds. It's one big loving family. In every big family, people might have differences, in views and so forth. But the kind of reception that I got and the support that I got for me to grow, it was amazing. From the board members, the executive, the members of the secretariat, that was led by the former CEO Nhlanhla Dube. Then it was so amazing. We became so more like so much of a family than colleagues. So that on its own helped me grow a lot, because for you to grow, you also need a conducive environment. So it was a very, very conducive environment. And then credit to the former CEO himself, Nhlanhla. He is one guy who believed in me a lot. He called me every day for diaries. I think in media I would say for diarizing stories and so forth. Could come, sit down, discuss a lot of things about the club. The conversations will not end without you learning a new thing. That's his nature, where you emphasize, and I used to know him. You hear him emphasizing something, he wants you to take that as a lesson. He's one person who would then even give you books to go and read. Just challenge you, say, go and read this book, do this. So it was a very, very interesting, it was very, very, very interesting journey, very, very interesting indeed, the support that I got. And then when the time came for me to be the acting CEO, I thought it was a huge responsibility, because sometimes I think, that's my belief, that it's better to wait until you are ripe for certain, positions. But I had to look back and, to reflect and say, I've been in football administration for the continuous 5 years. And if I went for a degree, a college degree for 4 years, and a master's degree for 2 years, why do I need more than 5 years to learn football administration? Yet I've been practicing football administration with the best football club in the country, where you get the best football administrators in the country. So I said to myself, let me just take this opportunity. Initially, I just accepted it that I would act for a certain period, and I never imagined that there is going to be an opportunity for me to be the substantive CEO. But for me, the starting point was to act, to give the club what was possible, what I was capable of giving to the club. So I did that during my 18 time. The fact that I was then asked to submit also my CV, was encouraged to submit my CV, meant that there's something good that they were seeing in me. So I submitted. I was called for interviews. I came for interviews. What was a bit stressful for me, because for me it's not only about myself but Highlanders, was the fact that Highlanders has got a very, very good strategy document that was put in place in 2020 that we are still trying to implement. My biggest fear was that maybe we might end up having someone who won't be able to drive that vision. And for me, where I stood, I thought I was the right person to drive that vision, because I was there when that document was formulated in 2020. I was there when we went to force for a strategic business plan. So that's where my confidence grew in myself to say, maybe I'm the right person to drive this thing, which is the challenge that I'm facing now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, we're talking about Ronald, the CEO. What's Ronald's vision? Obviously, you've got something besides the strategic document. What's your greater vision for the team?
Okay. Maybe it's because of my orientation here at Highlanders, where I've learned that, Highlanders, especially from an administrative perspective, it's a collective teamwork. That's the way the club is structured. Maybe that's the reason why it has stood the test of time. So I've learned that sometimes as an individual might have your own personal vision, but the vision of the institution itself takes precedence over everything. So I've tried to align my vision as an individual to the vision of the institution itself, where the institution is looking forward to going beyond football, to explore other possibilities where we want to go beyond football and inspire generations for the continuity of this institution. So my immediate vision is to modernize the club. Where you look at other clubs, I know there are clubs that I don't even want to mention names, from a global perspective, that we look at as the embodiment of how football clubs should be governed or should be run. So for me, the immediate challenge, I always challenge myself that I should drive that vision of modernizing this institution, which I think falls within the greater vision of the vision of the institution. So my vision for now is to, as I said, that the CEO has, is the secretariat, is to mobilize the secretariat, for instance, to mobilize maybe even the fans out there and members towards that one vision of modernizing this club, of making sure that we move beyond football, where we previously used to heavily rely on gate takings for income, for instance, and try and open other, revenue streams. It's possible. We know that we are operating in a very, very difficult economy, but in leadership, what they say, it's not about justifying problems, it's about finding solutions. So I think that's where we are as a club. That's my vision, to drive the vision of the club of going beyond football, by modernizing this club. I think at the end of the day, the reason why I don't want to speak about my individual vision is that we're doing this collectively, we're doing this as a team. Whatever is going to be achieved during my term of office, I don't want it to be attributed to Ronald, because you don't achieve things as an individual, they've achieved it as a team. So that's my vision, that we work collectively, we modernize this club, we move beyond football and commercialize the club, if you like, so that it self-sustains itself. I foresee, or I'm dreaming, I'm hungry for Highlanders that is not only celebrated here in Zimbabwe. I'm hungry for Highlanders that competes in Africa. I'm hungry for Highlanders that whose brand grows beyond the geographical boundaries of Zimbabwe. I think that is possible. What makes it even more possible is that there are people who came before us. They did a fantastic job during their different epochs. It speaks volumes that the institution was established in 1926, but it's still there, still competing. There are people we'd already started that journey of modernizing, I think, in the recent past. So what we need to do now, the immediate challenge, is to make sure that we guard their game jealously and move a step further.
Okay. And then there's a line of thought that says maybe Ronald is too young for that position. Ronald is the institution is way too big for him. Are you under pressure to deliver?
Not even under pressure. I think, as I said, that if a student can go to college, for instance, to varsity, and study a degree for 4 years, graduated and expected to go out there and explore the world out there. What about a young man who's been in football administration for 5 years? This is the 6th year in football administration, with 5 of those years being here at Highlanders. So I don't think it's an issue of age, it's an issue of ability. If I fail, I would have failed not because I'm young, I would have failed because I'm not capable. I think I even used the example of the late, great football administrator, Ndumiso Gumede, may he so rest in peace. He was entrusted with the responsibility to run this club in the capacity of the chairman at the age of 33. He was relatively young. So I don't know how young, where the statistics that we use as the society or the community to say so and so is young for that position. But with all due respect, at 30, I'm no longer young. I don't regard myself as young. Actually, I would have regarded myself as a failure if I, got to the age of 33 without, being entrusted with the responsibility to be one of such, with such big responsibilities. So for me, it's no longer young. Some of these things you might say we're young. Let's be realistic. What's the life expectancy now in Zimbabwe? So which means always wait forever. We'll never have such opportunities. So for me, what I'm actually dreaming of now, to say even the person who will come and take over from me must be maybe 25. So it's not about that particular individual. As I said, Highlanders is a system, and it's a system that will provide you with all the necessary support. You've got your board, which is twins, you've got your executive, So it's not like you are exposed. It's not like they are putting out there to set you up for failure. They're always there, to assist. So my age, I think my conclusion is that I'm young. I'm not young. I'm old enough. I've been in football. This is my 6th year in football administration. So I think I'm old enough.
All right. As we wind down, tell us about Ronald the family, man. I know some people call you summer twins.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm happily married. As you've already mentioned, I was blessed with twin sisters in 2015. They're in grade 1 now, and recently I was blessed with another, baby girl. I think on the 3rd of January. The most sad thing is that my wife had to to find a means to the hospital, because when it happened, I was actually on my way from the funeral of the late chairperson Ndumiso Gumede. So, but anyway, that's a blessing that we got as a family. So basically, that's me, my family. Maybe before my kids, maybe it's key to mention that I'm the only son from my mother's side. I'm the only baby from my mother's side, and I've got sisters from my father's side. So from my father's side, I'm the only boy, and 4 sisters.
Okay, so are your children iBosso supporters?
Very, very big iBosso supporters, the twins. Sometimes people don't understand. Maybe things just happen for a reason. When they started, talking, when they have to start talking, they used to, because I used to play a lot of Highlanders songs at home, so it got into them. So they know that there is Highlanders. They are very, very staunch Highlanders fans.
All right. Well, see you. Thanks a lot for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Wakala mande mwane wakala waze gwesa mama wakala mande mwane wakala waze gwesa Highlander.